co-host Matt Smith.
Good evening.
It is so nice to see you again.
Nice to see
I've
you as
missed
well. I missed you too. It's been a while.
It has.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Treg couldn't join this little happy reunion.
Hopefully I'll be back soon.
Hopefully.
It'd be nice to have
He
the
is
three of
busy,
us together.
right?
It's very much a rarity these days.
And with all the facial hair, it looks like we're the Three Musketeers.
Exactly.
It's like watching the movie Hangover.
Yeah, there's always one guy that's disappeared. Nowhere to be
And
found.
another one that's on drugs.
Yeah.
Guess which one it is? It's me. It's always me. All right. So this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the All-Star game. Thankfully, that's going to be behind us now. The Canadians are going to be getting back on the ice here. They did so today as we record. It's Thursday, February 9th. Games are going to be starting again on the weekend. There's been some trades in the NHL, which could impact the Canadians. We'll get into that as well. But before we start, I just want to send my condolences to the families that were affected by that fucking asshole crashing a bus into a daycare. I can't imagine the pain that those families are going through. I just can't.
You don't know what's going through someone's head that thinks up something like that. So I'll echo your words, and just, thoughts are with those families and with everyone that's going to be affected by this this act that's just, unimaginable why somebody would do something like this.
It boggles my mind. I just cannot grasp the reasoning. I don't think there could ever be a reason that would justify killing kids.
Yeah, 100%.
So our hearts go out to you guys. Hopefully it's that. Hopefully no one else has to suffer any permanent damage or further loss. All right. Now that has brightened everyone's mood, we'll cheer everybody up with a little bit of talk about the All-Star game and what kind of hot trash that was.
It was awful.
I mean, the games themselves with the 3-on-3s, they were okay. I mean, they're exactly what you expect.
Yeah, the game itself was all right. And as you said, it was kind of what you expect. You had some divisions that gave a shit a little bit more than the others, and it definitely showed on the ice. But that skills competition, like, oh my God. Like,
that loosely can be termed skills competition.
like you could tell nobody gave a shit. And it really showed. Like, the effort wasn't there. And like, I know people are going nuts about some of the people that scored goals or didn't score goals or whatever else, but like, it was trash. And just like, it was kind of embarrassing for the league more than anything. And like, I like the break because the players definitely need it. And it's great that these guys can go out and go on their tropical vacations and everything and kind of spend time with their families and come back.
Yeah.
But the guys that get voted into the All-Star game, it used to be something that was worth watching.
Yeah, there was a prestige to being picked. There was a prestige to going.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. And that skills competition, I mean, as hard as it was to watch, and I just couldn't. Even my son, who's 12 years old and he's right into this stuff, even he was kind of blasé about it. But I have to give the NHL some credit because they put in some kind of effort to try and make things, spice them up a little bit. Like that shootout on the beach with the dunk tanks.
Mm-hmm.
That's an original idea.
It is.
It seemed like it'd be a good idea, but the wind being a factor with the giant surfboards, you think they would have caught on to that one, but
right.
at least they tried.
Right. there was just no flow. Like, for instance, the fastest skater competition. Fastest skater used to be an event where everybody did their stuff, and then it was like, okay, you two were the fastest. Now you guys are going to go against each other. Instead, it was an hour later until Chandler Stevenson and Sveshnikov skated off against each other. An
Yeah.
hour later. And
Yeah.
like, and
Instead of
like
just
that,
having that skill
yeah,
competition, having that one skill together for a few minutes and then moving
right.
on to the next
And
one.
then move on. It was the same thing for the accuracy shooting, which I feel bad for McDavid because, go 4 for 4 in like 9-10 seconds, and then all of a sudden you have to prove yourself again. Um, it's dumb. Like, I remember that being an event where it was like you saw, guys like Jeremy Roenick, Ray Bork, etc. And you go 4 for 4, and it was like, hey, everyone was on their feet. Like,
Yeah.
it was so boring to watch. And that Tendy tandem, nobody knew really what the fuck was going on there. Um the that breakaway competition that was just kind of bits and pieces throughout throughout the event. It wasn't even a full thing. It was, okay, Marner came out, he came out on a breakaway on the longo, and then 45 minutes or so passed, and then somebody
Yeah.
else came out and did it to the judges. And it made no sense. There was no flow. I can see why people are very disappointed at this.
Yeah.
And the one that just, and it pisses me off even more that Suzuki won it, because it's a golf event, right? And like, cue the jokes, of course. But that whole what it was called, the pitch and puck or whatever the hell it was, like, give me a break. And you could tell, as I said, you could tell the players didn't give a fuck. And all this stuff was previously recorded, and it was just very terribly thrown together. Good on the NHL for throwing it in Florida, so the guys that are down there gonna get a little bit of good weather. Other than that, though, is very poorly done on the NHL's part. And maybe, honestly, they could learn something from how Laval did it for the AHL skills competition and the AHL All-Star game, because those were actually worth watching.
Well, yeah, and what I really liked about the AHL All-Star game, there was a flow to it. Everything was in the building, so the
Yep.
fans were involved. There was no sitting around staring at a screen
Yep.
after paying to get into a building.
Yeah, for
And
two
they removed the
events, for two,
glass.
and I like that. I like that. I was gonna bring
Yeah.
that up. I like that they pretty much, from almost the face-off dot to face-off dot,
Yeah.
all that glass was, and it was very more of a fan focused event, as you said. Like, and you
Yeah.
guys weren't paying to go and then watch two events on a screen. It was like, as I said, like, if I would have been there, I would have been like, what the hell is this?
Well, the All-Star game in Florida was as disorganized as Florida's politics. It was just
or trying to find
everywhere.
or trying to find your seats in the arena, which we've done before.
Which empty seat am I filling this today?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. But it was
You know what they
but
needed? They needed that Kid Cudi thing where the guy was banging his girlfriend up in the stands.
but honestly, it was embarrassing. And there could be some changes that could be made. One, get a little bit of flow, go event by event. Um, like, I don't want to like shit on creativity, because yes, you want to bring in some new ideas and everything, but some of them just don't work. And sometimes you got to think to yourself, when they're making these ideas, like, who's making these final decisions on some of these events that go through, or some of these judges they bring in and everything like that. Like, it was a waste. It was a waste of time. The only thing that's good for the players that were picked is the extra money that they make for being selected, and the
Yeah.
extra money that Matthew Chuck is making for being the MVP, which are I think they're
Yeah.
category A and B bonuses on your contract, which is like, I
Yeah.
think
Something along those
which I think
lines.
is like $250,000. So that
Hey,
ain't
you
too
know,
bad.
No, it's not too bad. It's the kind of money you'd like to make for going to Florida, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, and next year's event is going to be in Toronto.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what kind of gimmick they're going to show because they can only do one round of anything in Toronto.
You know what? It's gonna, it'll be interesting to see because it's gonna be in a totally different climate. Obviously, end of January, early February in Ontario is going to be a hell of a lot different than being in Florida.
So what you're saying is the dunk tank in Toronto will be a lot more interesting.
It could very well could be, but but it could really end up being something worth watching. And I'm not just saying it because it's going
Yeah.
to be in Toronto, but it's going to be based in Canada. What are they going to do?
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, because it's in Canada, I don't think they feel like they're going to have to be as gimmicky
Mhm.
to get butts in seats or get eyes on the screen. So maybe they go back to something a little bit more traditional. I personally, I would love to see a Rendezvous 87 style All-Star weekend. A little bit of a mini tournament, international flavor, World Cup kind of idea.
Yeah.
Bring in some intensity to the All-Star weekend and
But this is the
and
only
make it a little
problem with
different.
that. This is the only problem with that. They don't want to bring intensity into this
Well,
because
no, it's a no-hit thing.
they don't want these players to be injured during this tournament, which brings a lot of the life out of the game.
Yeah, for
You
a
might see a
contact
little
sport.
right, you might see a little bit more stick checking and everything when games get closer, when you're getting $1 million on the line type thing, but there's no incentive to win other than that chunk of money that obviously gets distributed between all the players. But there's no incentive.
No.
Maybe if they added some sort of incentive to the winning division, then maybe that you'd see a little bit more and maybe a little bit more intensity or a little bit more give a fuck from the players.
Add in a play-in game for an extra team in the playoffs or some shit, some crazy shit like
Well,
that.
you could do there's so many crazy ideas floating out there.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with a buddy of mine the other day, and I brought up the idea that the winning division, if it happens that they win the cup. Okay. So say if the
Yeah.
Metro was to win the All-Star game and then they won the cup, that team would get a chance at the lottery for the draft. Like I'm talking about like
Okay.
they would get like obviously the highest the lowest odds to win, but they'd still have that 1% chance to win the lottery and move up 10 spots. So they could
I
only
mean, that'd be
move up.
great for the fans.
Well, they'd only be able to move up from what they would have like they would only be able to go up because they would be an extra team, so they'd be 17. So they'd only be able to move up if 10 spots, they'd only be able to move up to 7.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't see how that would get the players more involved because
I
the
don't know.
players really don't give a shit about that.
I guess. But it's
But
like they could work something in to make people care.
maybe go back to the old style of the Stanley Cup champion team plays a group of all stars.
Yeah. And I'd actually like to see them go back to East versus West and play
Yeah,
5-on-5 again instead of the 3-on-3 bullshit. And I'd also like to see the skills competition, instead of it being so individually based, have what they did in the AHL or what they used to do and have it so their point totals during the skill, like
yeah,
like
yeah.
and even if they wanted to do it divisionally based, maybe your division based results from your skills competition will reflect into what your all-star game teams would be. So, 1 against 4, 2 against 3, instead of just saying it's always going to be the Central against the Pacific, etc.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of ideas that could improve that gong show of a weekend. Has become kind of uh, a meh kind of
Yeah,
event, and the NHL doesn't want that. The NHL needs it to be a little bit more talked about,
yeah,
and in a good way, not the
yeah.
way we're doing it right now.
And I think that's why
So
they put it in Toronto. To be honest,
I think so.
I think that's why they put it in the Canadian market for next year.
Yeah, right next to TSN. We all know how much they love the Leafs. Um, we're going from the All Star game to an All Star trade. So today, as we record, Tarasenko is now a New York Ranger, and the Rangers gave up a couple of conditional picks, a conditional first, conditional seconds. There's a whole bunch of other crap, semi bleh, and a couple of mid-level players that nobody really knows unless they Google them.
Yeah,
So essentially, the Rangers just became a much better team because you put him on a line with someone like Panarin and Zibanejad.
oh yeah,
Holy shit.
yeah.
Which makes the Metro a little bit harder.
It does. It does. Other teams in the
And
Metro are gonna have to like right now the Rangers are third in the Metro. But there's
yeah,
gonna be other teams that are gonna have to make a move now because bringing in a player of his caliber is gonna make people start picking up the phone. That's for sure. Um, it's a huge win for the Rangers for that trade. It really is.
well,
They
yeah.
really gave up nothing for him. And that's gonna kind of show that St. Louis giving up a player of that caliber, even though there's been talks for the last year or so that he is on the block. Um, right now they're sitting third last in the Central,
Yeah.
5 points back in Nashville. So it's maybe looking like they're gonna start to sell off some assets.
Well, he just did.
So,
Huge.
but more assets, and maybe they're starting to understand that let's get our players out, or let's get our deals done now and try to see what the market's like, because they don't want to get to a point where they're asking for too much and then they have to settle. And I really think that they didn't ask for enough for Tarasenko.
No, not in this case, no. But this what this does is signal that the Blues are definitely going into a rebuild,
Yeah.
and O'Reilly is on the block.
He
So
is, and
that's a big piece.
he is, and he's already talked about the potential of him being on the block. He is their captain,
Yeah.
and he is happy he's happy where he's at.
Yeah. But
Right.
is
And he's already said that
but are
he's
the
happy where
Blues?
he's at. Well, it's hard to say. I don't know what his I think he's got a no move, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look at his contract details. If he does,
Either way.
then it's really his own, he controls his own destiny. Just like a guy like Patrick Kane, who apparently the Rangers were very in on, but his hip injury was kind of scaring them off a little bit, so they went
Yeah.
another direction, and apparently the ask was way too much.
Well, it would have been a lot more than what they gave up for
Yeah, well,
Tarasenko, that's for sure.
absolutely, absolutely.
But this Tarasenko deal, what it does is it it's a gigantic scream to the rest of the Metro that they're in it to win it. And that means teams like the Devils,
Yeah,
who have been looking to make some waves,
yeah,
and Carolina both really have to make a deal now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If they
they do.
want
And you
to
look and
truly compete, they need to make a move.
yeah, and you look at Carolina, who just lost Pacioretty again, unfortunately. Another
Yeah, but yeah,
Achilles injury. They've got
yeah,
the money. They get the money to spend. So you
yeah,
look at a
yeah.
guy maybe
That's
like,
7 mil.
yeah, you look at a guy, they need a center, and they need a winger. So I'm looking at maybe them picking up the phone and looking at a Timo Meyer, and I could throw that into the Devils plan as well.
Yeah, I can see both teams in on Meyer for sure. I think that $10 million, the qualifying offer for Meyer, is probably going to take Carolina out of that deal, though, because we all know that even though Dundon likes to pretend he's this big rich billionaire, which he is, but he's a cheap ass. He
Yeah,
does not want to spend that kind of money.
yeah. It's gonna really depend on the team acquiring the player, if it's gonna purely be a rental or if they think that they can make that signing.
Yeah, with the Devils making a move like that, it makes sense in my view because they desperately need a player like that. He's got a history with guys like Heischer and playing in Halifax, and his age fits their core group,
Yeah.
and they have the money to sign him long term.
Yeah. They have the assets to
That
get him
too.
as well because they've been shit for so many years and they've went prospect after prospect after prospect. You look at their prospect, well, it's one of the deeper ones in the league.
Yeah,
So they have the players there, the young players there that another team that's looking to do a rebuild are going to want to ask for, and I say that they could make that deal. Another, and
I
then
think so.
let's just say another one for Meyer would be Vegas because Mark Stone just had a back surgery and
Hmm.
I think he's out the rest of the year.
And if there's any one team in the NHL that loves making a massive splash, it's Vegas.
That's right. However,
So
their prospects and their depth definitely not as good as what it used to be because
no,
they gave them all away to acquire players that have made them what they are today. And they're still the top team in the Pacific. I'm not gonna shit on them. But they've made a lot of say outlandish trades over the last little bit or some outlandish signings, some that have worked out, some that haven't. But at the end of the day, they're still the top team in their respective division.
yeah, I'm not sure that I can see Vegas being a team that would win the West, and even if they did, by some miracle, compete with anybody that comes out of the East. I
Right.
can't see it.
Right.
But the Devils, if they do miss out on Meyer, because Meyer's considered to be one of those new age power forwards, he's not
Yeah.
necessarily like a prototypical type, but he's got the size, he can score. But if they miss out on him, do they take a swing on Anderson?
Hard to say. It's hard to
Because
say like
he's
that, but
cheaper.
that would be more of a hockey trade as opposed to a possible rental situation or a sign and trade or whatever else you want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, that'd be more of a hockey deal, and it's. I really don't know if Anderson's going to move. I honestly don't. I
Well, I
know
mean,
that
if the Devils,
I know that Hughes is very high on this player, and so is the team.
yeah, and I mean, they like pretty much everybody on the roster, but everybody has a price.
That's right.
So if the Devils call and say, "Hey, we're going to give you a second at Holtz,"
Right.
well, he's packed up and ready to move before he
Right.
hangs up the phone.
Right. It's honestly it's going to depend on offers that come through. There's
Yeah,
players there's
because
players that are there's players that are going to move in Montreal. We already know this. But there's some there,
Anderson, I don't see being anything that can move at the deadline really, unless they blow the doors off of
yeah.
Hughes,
Yeah.
just because of his contract.
If he moves, it's going to in my opinion, I've said this a few times since we brought this topic up a few times. Um I can see if he moves, it's going to be a draft trade or an off-season trade.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be more of a
Well,
hockey deal. Players are going to or teams are going to look and see where they're at during the summer and they're going to say, "Okay, do we need a player like this?" And then well, there's few players that play with the style that Anderson plays with.
yeah, no, he's power forwards are hard to find in the NHL right now, especially a guy who's on pace for 25 goals on probably one of the worst teams in the
Yeah.
league,
Yeah.
playing with a bunch of AHLers at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But whatever Hughes does, I think at this deadline, he should have the focus on. Obviously, he's trying to get the maximum deal, but he should also be looking to help the team a little bit by stacking the deck against the Panthers.
Right.
Because the lower they go in the standings, the better it is for them.
It's true. That's true.
So if
And
you can,
yeah, well, I hope the Florida keeps losing games. But they beat what? They beat Tampa what, like 7-1 the other day or something. So
well, I mean, that was the grudge match for a revenge game for beating up on their, their mascot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know
Nobody
it's
beats
hard.
on him but us.
Yeah. Honestly, it's hard to say. Like, if we want to keep into the rumors, we can jump into Joel Edmonston.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's looking like Edmonton and the Kings have reached out. Obviously,
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mark Bergevin works for the Kings now. He's the one that signed him to that contract.
Yeah.
I can see why the Kings would be interested. But
Well, the Kings
I
are
don't know what kind of I just don't know what kind of return you're going to get from the Kings. But I think it would
well,
be a
here's the
better
thing.
return than what Edmonton would give you.
Maybe. But here's the thing with the Kings. And I talk about this with Marco D'Amico in the last episode. The Kings are stacked on the right side of the defense.
Right.
They desperately need left side defenders, and they need veterans who have a little bit of an edge to their game.
Right.
Now, Edmondson kind of like that. He's a little bit more mobile. He's not quite as physical as he has been in the past, but he kind of fits the bill. And they could offer up a right-handed defenseman in return. So that could be a pure hockey trade.
Right.
Edmonton, on the other hand, that's a
If
a
you're look
whole other
if
can
you're
of
looking
worms.
at if you're looking at the Kings though, who are you asking for? Or what do you think a deal would be looking for? Would they be looking to get that first round pick from the Kings?
I think they would be looking for a first round pick, but if the Kings don't want to give up that pick, uh, it's going to be a player,
Okay.
clearly. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say who would be worth the Kings giving up to get Edmondson.
Yeah. Because a lot of people are talking about this now that they've brought up the fact that he has been linked to that team. And
Mhm.
people are throwing names out there like Turcotte and Velarde and stuff like that. Like that's not gonna happen. Right? Like I'll be a realist.
No.
Like I'm not playing NHL on my PlayStation right now. Like I'm being a realist. I play like it's not gonna happen. Even though you've got Kopitar, you've got Deneau, you've got Quentin Byfield, you've got Turcotte, you've got Velarde. All these guys are centers, and they only got so many places to really put them. A player like Edmondson, unfortunately, isn't gonna make that deal. Um, I would think that if they can't get a first, which is likely what the first ask is going to be from Hughes, they do have a pair of third round picks and they have their own second. So maybe it'd be a second and a prospect, for instance. And if I'm looking at their prospects, you brought up the fact that you're gonna possibly look for a defenseman. Two defensemen that kind of catch my eye are maybe Grans, big
Yeah.
Swedish defenseman,
Yeah.
who's playing in Ontario right now. If they want to go on the more offensive side, you're looking at Jordan Spence, who used to play for the Moncton Wildcats. So I've seen him play. I know you've seen him play. And if they want to go a little bit more, let's go for a forward. I would be looking at Francisco Pinelli, who is a teammate of Mesher in Kitchener.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Grants would be a home run return if that's what he would get back. And I can see them being willing to uh, give up that asset to get Edmondson and maybe even throw in something else. Nothing major, but something else.
Right.
Um, yeah, and that would definitely make a big difference for the Kings, who are in a dogfight for the playoffs right now.
Right. So that's the Kings. If you're looking at Edmonton, what are you looking at for a trade?
Uh,
Because they've got all their picks.
as the Oilers or as the Canadians?
Well, we're talking about Edmonton. If they because they've been linked to both teams,
Yeah,
have been linked to Chetron, which is obviously going to be the big money, big deal. Because
yeah.
Arizona's going to ask the moon for him. Then you've got Edmonton and you've got Gabrikov with Columbus, and all of those teams have been linked to these three players.
Well, yeah, they're all kicking tires on defensemen,
Right.
and you can throw the Bruins in on that list.
Yeah.
But if the I don't know if the Oilers are looking for a player, a defenseman, it's probably going to be someone with some term
Right.
because that GM he doesn't like gambling too much. He likes that security blanket.
Right.
And Edmondson having another year, that kind of gives him a little bit of certainty. It balances out their defense with a little bit of experience, a little bit of size, some a little bit of mobility, but more defensive play,
Right.
and that's something that they're kind of lacking in. Um, so for them, they're going to have to move some money out to bring in $3.5 million. They only got about $1 million in deadline space, so you're looking at something around 2.5 to $3 million has to go out of Edmonton. Now, bringing in Edmondson on the blue line, that means you're going to have to probably move someone back down to the minors. So someone like a Broberg or Evan Bouchard, I don't know, whoever they decide. Um, so that's about almost $1 million. So
So
who
what
do
kind
they
of
give up?
it's
What else
well,
do they move?
the ask is going to end up being their first. I think we know that the ask,
Yeah,
or the starting ask for him, is going to be a first, which they do have.
yeah,
Um, if the first isn't an option, you go to the second, but then you bump up whatever else your ask is going to be. I know that there's been a lot of rumors around Xavier Bourgault.
yeah, yeah.
I know there have been a lot of rumors with him. And you also have um Raphael Lavoie.
Uh, I don't know if he would be something they want. He doesn't have the best rep
Work ethic.
reputation for
Yeah,
work ethic.
yeah,
Bourgeot actually does, and he's a former first round pick, so that's their first round in return. That would
right.
check that box.
What about Reed Schaefer?
Maybe. I'm looking at McLeod right now. That's a guy who's 23 years old. He's going to be coming on to he's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. He's starting to become an NHL regular. I can see him being something that the Oilers would be willing to give up to get Edmondson, and that could be that first round value that Hughes is looking for because he's a
Right.
former first rounder as well. There's
McLeod? McLeod's second round.
McLeod, yeah,
McLeod was second
uh,
round. Yeah, same thing.
essentially he
he
was
was like
picked 32nd or something.
he was yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just gonna double check here, see where he's drafted. He was drafted. Oh no, 40th.
Okay.
Never
But
mind.
even then
Either way,
it could be an option.
as part of a package, sure. I
What
know
about
that
what about
the
Pugliarvi?
standard. I was going to say that. I said the standard response would be, "Hey, let's just throw $3 million for the 3.5." And to be honest, if they use him as a throw-in on the deal, I would be all for it. I think that would be an excellent move by the Canadians, depending on what else comes with them. If they can get a first-round pick plus Puljujärvi, it's a
Yeah.
absolute
Yeah.
no-brainer.
So his qualifying offer for next year is an RFA. His qualifying offer would be $3 million.
Yeah, and here's the thing: he comes in, he has no pressure. If he performs well in Montreal, you can get him to sign for less than his qualifying offer. That's a possibility. If he reaches the levels of his qualifying offer, then he's worth it for another year. And if he doesn't play well, you just don't qualify him and you let him walk away, and you
Right.
still have that first round pick.
Right. Right.
So it's a low risk, high reward kind of addition to any deal. And the Canadians are looking for guys with size who can skate, and he fits the bill.
Absolutely.
Will Edmondson end up there? I don't know. Maybe. I think the Kings are probably going to be a little bit more aggressive, just because Bergevin loves Edmondson.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Time will
Who
tell.
knows? Which brings us to the injuries, because Edmondson right now he's day to day. He was on the ice skating away from the team prior to practice today. It was first day back for the Canadians on the ice. And he was joined by Sean Monahan, who's back on the ice, and he was wearing normal gear, contact jersey, the whole thing. But again, not practicing with the team yet. But he is on the ice again, and he is skating, going through the drills. So that kind of points to he could possibly come back, but how long, we don't know. Eric Engels tweeted about this, and the expectation now is that management should be giving some kind of update before their next game on Saturday.
Yep. I hope. But honestly, like it's bad for the Canadians the longer he's not playing. Because then
yeah,
there's going to be teams that are going to either not make a bid for his services, or the bid is going to be a lot lower than what we expected. Because like with how he was playing prior to his injury, and then he was only supposed to miss a short amount of time, everyone's still like first round pick, first round pick, first round pick, first round pick, starts with a first round pick. And now the longer this drags on, the possibility of a first round pick is starting to kind of get pulled away as well.
Well, yes and no, because if he can come back prior to the playoffs, I don't think a team's really going to give a crap. But the thing is, with Bo Horvat now off the board, and now O'Reilly is back into the mix for trade, because clearly the Blues are looking to make deals. Who else is going to be on the block? Who else is going to be available at center that teams are going to start looking for? Because the longer he's out, the more they're going to start kicking tires on other guys, and maybe something else falls off a bookshelf somewhere.
Right.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
Could be, like you're playing musical chairs with centers, and Hughes could be the last one at the dance, holding a center that he doesn't want anymore.
Right.
What do you think?
Right now, I'm hoping that whatever injury that he has had that's kept him out for this long. Well, we know it's his foot, but why is it taking a lot longer than what they were projecting? I'm hoping that he can still turn this into a first round pick. That was the hope, that was the thought, that was the plan. We know that Hughes wants that third first round pick. There's teams out there that could definitely use those services. We've talked about a few of them: Washington, Colorado, etc. But I'm not sure at this point what the return was going to be, or if he's going to be a step behind when he comes back. And we're already looking at a different team with all the injuries that are out there right now. It's not like he's going to come back and play with the same players he was playing with. The level intensity is not there what it used to be. So I don't know, is that going to affect anything?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It really is. And what teams are going to be out there looking for a center or willing to give up that first? Would Carolina give up a first for a rental? Maybe, if the Canadians eat half the cap and he's capable of playing, sure. The fact that they got a first round pick just for taking him off Calgary's hands, really, whatever the return is in a deal, it's still a win.
Yeah.
It would just be a massive win if they can pull off another first, and
especially
somehow
especially in such a deep
picks.
draft. Especially in such a deep draft.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's the Canadians do need goaltending in their system, and if they had a third pick, they can pick up a guy like Michael Hrabel, who's a 6'6" goaltender,
right?
Who's slated to go in the first round.
Yeah, with that late pick, and not have to worry about reaching perhaps with the Florida pick.
Yeah, exactly. And right now the Florida pick's somewhere around 12, 13.
Yeah.
More likely it's going to end up being a top 15.
But when they win the lottery and they move down to like 3, then Montreal doesn't have to use like 5 to pick a goalie.
Oh,
Because they
no,
already
no.
picked Connor Bedard.
Hello, because they won the lottery themselves.
That's right.
Everything moves up,
Yeah.
which kind of gives me a thought. What do you do if you're the Canadians and you have, say, pick number 6 and pick number 12? Do you, with number 6, do you go after Michkov,
If he's available,
who's going to
perhaps.
slide a little bit? Yeah, or do you just go with someone else like a Will Smith or Dvorsky? And at 12, if Michkov is still there, do you pick him then, or do you still go off the
If
board
Michkov
away
goes
from
to if
Michkov?
Michkov drops to 12 and they don't pick him, I'll throw something on my screen. Because there's no way you pass on a player like that, especially if he drops that far and you have that
Yeah.
second first to be able to take a chance on. There's no way there's no way you pass up a player like that. I know you're not going to see him for a few years because he's still going to be under contract, but this is a very good goal scorer. Goal scorers are a premium at the NHL level. This is a guy that you have to pick for sure.
He is undersized, and the Canadians already have an undersized scoring winger.
They do. They
So do
do.
you have two?
He's gonna be a few years getting into the league anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So I wouldn't I still can't say that I'd pass on him. If he falls to 12, 13, and this guy was projected to go top 3 perhaps,
Yeah.
it'd be very hard to pass on.
I can't argue that. I
It's
mean,
worked with
even if you,
like people passed on Caulfield, which I know we're going to get into in a second. People passed
yeah.
on Caulfield because of his size, and look at the player he's turned into
And there is
on a
that.
team that's not that skilled.
True. But how many Stanley Cup winning teams have that many undersized players? Because the Canadians also have Ottawa, they have Farrell, they've got a few others who are a little undersized. How many undersized forwards can you have and still be a cup winning team?
That's true. That's true.
But at the same time, you could trade Michkov when he's about ready for whatever you need.
It-
That is a possibility. Now, we'll get into a little bit on Caulfield here and his injury and his return. That brings me to Caulfield and a little bit about his injury and maybe his contract. So he had the surgery. I talked about this in a previous episode with Marco, but what are your thoughts on the injury itself and your thoughts on his recovery? Because you've had injuries similar to this before.
yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I like the fact that he was very confident when it came to the surgery. It wasn't, hey, I'm scared to do it. It was the same individual that did Josh Anderson's, and so far, Anderson has really been a new player. He's he's in a little bit. He was always a physical player, but he just kind of seems that he's getting a little bit more. There's a little bit more to his game now. In terms of the recovery, he's going to be back before. It looks like he's going to be back for training camp, so it's not going to hurt the team. It's not going to hurt him. So if he comes back and he's going to be the same player, just with a stronger shoulder like Anderson, I'm not too scared about it. And I don't think that it's going to affect his long-term deal, which we know he's going to get. Gone are the days that a player like that is going to get a bridge deal. And I'm looking at 2 players that signed in the last little while, Matt Boldy and Dylan Cousins, who were both drafted that same year. and I'm looking at those contracts as comparables to what Caulfield's going to be asking for or receive.
Yeah. I think it does kind of, if anyone was thinking he was going for 9 million or was going to get 9 million,
No,
what those two deals do
right.
is temper that worry a little bit.
Yeah. So like Matt Boldy, for instance, 12th overall 2019, he signed a 7x7 deal. Bill Guerin signed him to that deal. You got Dylan Cousins, who just signed the other day, who was 7th overall in 2019, just signed a deal 7x7.1, right? He's having a very good season at 43 points in 49 games. Boldy is sitting at 36 points in 50 games. Prior to his injury, Caulfield was sitting on 36 in 46 with 26 goals. As I said earlier, goal scoring is a premium in the league. So I can see him being the player that makes the most of these three players. But at the same time, I'm not going that much higher with his contract. Like there's like you just I look at other players that are goal scorers in this league and look at some of their contracts, and I'm like, you can't, you like, as much as I love Cole Caulfield, you can't pay this guy more than these players, right?
Yeah. I,
One of them being Tage Thompson, who's making 7.1 starting next
mhm.
year, an 8-year deal. Yes, he's 25 years old, so he's closer to his prime, and he was a late bloomer. And then I look at the other one being Jason Robertson, who's making 7.75 right now, and both of them are premium goal scorers in the league right now. And he's 23 years old. So I'm looking at a deal for Caulfield. I'm saying 7.25 at the most. 8-year deal
um,
or a 7-year deal.
yeah.
If you go into the eighth year, then I could see them moving, moving the cap money up a little bit. But if it's a similar 7-year deal, like one of those other two players, 7.25. That's the highest I would go.
Well, right now, the word on the street, from what I've been hearing from others, and what I've seen on certain websites is that they both sides want a long-term deal. So that bodes well. So that means 7 to 8 years. Great. That way Suzuki and Caulfield could be together for a long time throughout their entire prime, basically.
Right.
My thing is when I'm looking at the comparables, I try to also look at comparables from the past to see how that fits and how much of the cap percentage did each one of those players make. And I haven't seen much more than 9 to 10% for a big name winger, usually closer to 9. Only a handful have gone to 10, and that was overpayments by teams like Toronto.
Right.
So I'm thinking closer to 7.75. But how much pressure do players like Caulfield who want to win
Yep.
look at other teams in their division and say, well, those guys are getting long-term deals for a little bit cheaper, leaving money on the table for other players on the team like Buffalo. They've got their top two centers signed for under $15 million for the next 7 years. How much does that factor into his thinking, saying, well, maybe I can take just a little bit less?
That's true. That's true.
So does he take closer to 8% or does he go all the way to 9%? But either way, I don't see him getting more than Suzuki.
No, no, I can't see that either. I don't think there's a chance that's gonna happen. Um, I'm looking at who's gonna get signed first between And they're two different players, but they do the same job. So don't fucking freak out on me in the comment section by comparing the two. But I'm looking at a guy.
That's Matt Smith at
But I'm looking at David Pasternak. Okay. David Pasternak is coming
yeah.
off of a very good deal for the Bruins, making $6.6 million, which was signed back in 2017. He is now sitting at 72 points with 38 goals in 51 games. Obviously, two completely different players, two completely different teams, especially in the standings. Okay. But this is a guy that is now 26 years old, he'll be 27 in May, prime years of his career. He's going to want to look for a huge contract. If
Yeah.
he makes 11 million bucks, do you think that possibly will bump up a younger player as in Caulfield? Could that bump up his ask?
I mean, I'm sure they'll try, but whether it works out or not, I don't think so.
Because he was on pace this
And
year. He was on pace for, let's just say, his first 40 goal season.
true, but Pasternak has a longer track record
He does. He
and a
does.
more
And
proven one.
he does. But I'm just wondering if that deal gets done first, if it's going to hurt the Canadians. I don't think it will.
No, I'm with you. I don't think it'll hurt them. I don't see Pasternak taking such a team friendly deal again either. I see him
No.
taking something much closer to market value.
Yeah. Well, a guy like Krejci's likely gone. You've got a guy in Bergeron. Even though I love the guy, even though he's Bruin, he's probably gone at the end of the year too.
Yeah. I mean, his
But they
age,
but they
yeah.
also have to sign most of their team because they are really, other than their defense, and they everyone else is pretty much a free agent at the end of the year, other than Marchand, Hall, Coyle, and Zaka, and AJ Greer for forwards. Everyone else is, we need to sign a bunch of players. So Pasternak's going to look at that and he's going to say, I want this money. So yeah, I don't think he's going to take a team friendly deal either. But going back to Caulfield, um, I would not pay him more than Suzuki, and I'd only pay him more than $7.5 million or 7.25 if he signs on for the 8th year. Because then
Okay. No, I think that's
right, because
reasonable.
you're betting on the player. Like if you look at comparable players from the same year that just got 7 and 7.1 respectively, yes, they're three different players. However, being that he is the goal scorer of the group, that's your premium. That's who I'm paying more. But I would not go more than 7.25 until we get into the 8th year. Then I'd jump up 7.5, 7.75 at most.
Is I'm looking at the 2019 draft class right now, and Jack Hughes the more might be someone who can score almost as much, maybe. Capo Caco, I can't see it. I really can't. I'm looking down the list. I mean, Cousins has just signed, like you mentioned. Geez. Peyton Krebs hasn't really broken in yet, but he might be pretty good, but I don't see him scoring goals like Caulfield. I don't see anybody in this draft class that could honestly be considered
Well,
as good
even
of a goal scorer.
even Jack Hughes, right? Jack Hughes is signed to his deal. He's already signed it.
Yeah.
He's got 35 goals this year, having a very good season with the Devils at 67 points in
Mhm.
50 games or so. He only signed for 8 million bucks. He signed 8 by
Exactly.
8. And he is
And that's my point.
right, and he's a much better, say, two-way threat, goal scorer slash playmaker than Caulfield
True.
is. Right.
That's true. I don't see anybody in this entire draft class that really challenges at the goal scoring level, but points total wise, there's the handful, and none of them are really breaking the $8 million mark.
No.
So I'm with you. 7.5 over 8, I think, is a
Right.
very reasonable deal.
Yeah. Another player that I'd be
So
looking at possibly when it comes to a comparable will be Zegras when he signs. Because
yeah,
he'll need to sign
yeah,
as well. And he was same draft. Or he went ninth overall, I believe, that year. And
yes, he did,
and
and
as of right now, he has not signed his deal. He's got 43 points in 52 games playing on a very, very, very weak team.
mhm.
Last year he put up 61 points in 75 games.
Yeah, his
So
career totals are pretty similar to to Caulfield's as well.
yeah, I could see all
So
those
yeah,
players being in around 7 million, $7.5 million.
I can see that. So we just solved the Canadians' cap structure for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and now that we're done that, do you have any final thoughts?
Not about the team. I just want to take a second to thank everyone for all the nice birthday messages that you guys sent out for me. The question that I got the most was, "How old are you?" I'm 35 now. So
No,
thank you,
it's
everyone.
impossible.
Thank you, everyone, for the nice messages and the tweets and everything. It was great. For me, it ended up being a quiet day. I had chicken Alfredo and chocolate cake, so that was that was my day. But I had the day off work, so it worked out.
And for me, I just want to send out my condolences again to the families in Laval, but also to uh, the Richard family here in Halifax. Brady Richard, who plays for the Dartmouth Whalers out of Eastern Passage here in Halifax, he passed away from cancer. Now, this is a kid that my son has played hockey against, and it's just a tragedy. So, my final thought is: can you, if you can, donate to a cancer charity? Donate volunteer some time at an oncology ward. Try and help out a little bit because cancer affects everybody, and it is not. It, it sucks. It really sucks, and I feel terrible for these families. Uh, I hate starting and ending a show on such low notes, but this week has been difficult for good news, and hopefully next week we're going to be filled with good news, like tons of trades, first round picks, everything to your heart's desires. But for now, please, if you can, help out cancer charities as best you could possibly do. And for our listeners, thank you very much for everything that you guys have been doing, sending us all those messages, emails. I've passed on some of your comments to Coach Dan Errol, who was on our show earlier this week, letting him know how much you guys appreciated his input, and he really appreciates all the support that you've provided him, and we appreciate the support you give us. You helped make this show a successful one. We're now on Crier Media, and we never would have made it to this point had it not been for you guys and Matt's beautiful face.
I do what I can. I do what I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you're getting old now. You're going to have to moisturize.
That's true.
So I want to thank everyone again for listening. And remember, if you're